Welcome to People Like You. Jubilee Christian Center in San Jose, California is a very diverse church. Each week, people of all ages and all walks of life gather together. Jubilee Christian Center, founded by Pastor Dick Bernal 38 years ago, still thrives. Pastor Adam Bernal and his wife Michelle update us on their San Jose campus and plans for expansion, so don't go away.
In October of 1989, I was at the World Series game, and I was in the upper deck, and the massive earthquake happened throughout the Bay Area. And it was the first time in my life that I really felt like I was at the mercy of a situation.
Wow.
Whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
Yeah.
I have no say in this matter. And that was kind of a turning point in my life. And within 2 weeks, I would give my heart to the Lord, and within about 8 weeks, I would be working in the ministry where I quit my job. Where there's vision, there'll be provision, and it was the best decision of my life.
I met a young girl who asked me to come pray for her family, and that was the first time I ever stepped on a leper colony. And at that point, I knew from that moment on that that was my call for the rest of my life.
Hansen's disease is the current term they're using for leprosy.
We really have helped cure the disease because it is curable through medicine.
Welcome back. Adam and Michelle Bernal are not only the son and daughter-in-law of Pastor Dick Bernal, they're also pastors at Jubilee Christian Center. And I'm sure Pastor Dick loves having you serve alongside him.
I hope so. He has no choice. I'm his eldest son. So.
It's amazing to me that it's been 38 years. I remember those first few years.
It's unbelievable how fast time goes, which kind of makes you realize you got to redeem it and squeeze as much life out of it as you can. Yes.
So you were telling me, though, that it started in Pastor Juanita's home. Really?
Jubilee Christian Center, yes, started in Morgan Hill, California, and for the first 2 years of its existence was meeting in my aunt's home.
That's amazing.
And then eventually moved to Cupertino and Sunnyvale, and then settled in North San Jose, kind of where Alviso is today.
And how many, when it first became a church building, about how many people did it seat at that time?
Well,
do you remember?
There was 4 major campuses that they upgraded, from 500 chairs to about 1,200 chairs, and then 1,800 chairs, and today about 3,500 chairs in the main, which they've been in since 1998.
And the services are on Friday night, Sunday, and then?
Yes, Friday night 7:30, Sundays 9 and 11:15, and then in Spanish at 2 o'clock.
It's amazing. And Pastor Bernal is not slowed down at all.
Not at all. No, my father's in his 70s now, and I think there's some 35-year-olds that would have a hard time
keeping up with him.
Yes, he's very, very active, and I love it.
Jubilee attracts a really nice, diverse group of people.
Yeah, I think if you walk through our parking lot on a Sunday, you would see everything from a Ford Pinto to a high-end Mercedes. And people have always kind of asked us, what's your secret? Because you have, a wide swath of humanity there and in Silicon Valley. And to be honest with you, I don't think my father ever targeted that. I think it just kind of organically happened.
Exactly.
So. When he accepted Christ, he was in, regardless, as I recall.
Yeah. He sold everything and went to Rhema Bible College in Tulsa, and took his little pregnant wife, and they were there for a year and a half and came back and started the church.
Well, and so tell me, when the church started, tell us about that, you growing up in a church. When did you actually get involved in the ministry side? Because I'm sure you had to work through your own salvation and commitment.
Yeah, well, it started in 1980, but I did not start coming until 1989. I am his son from his previous marriage.
Okay.
This is BC, which we like to say means before Carla.
Before Carla.
So, and but me and my father were always close, and I do remember getting a phone call one day, and I remember, if you remember, the catchphrase in the 70s was, "I found it."
Yes.
And he called me and said, "Son, I found it." And I remember thinking, oh no, my fun father is
something else.
Going to be a Bible thumper, and but he wasn't. He was still my dad. He just seemed so much happier. But it took me more time. In October of 1989, I was at the World Series game with the Oakland A's and the San Francisco Giants, game
That would have been
3.
a while ago.
And I was in the upper deck, and the massive earthquake happened throughout the Bay Area. And it was the first time in my life that I really felt like I was at the mercy of a situation.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
just,
Wow.
whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I
Yeah.
have no say in this matter. And that was kind of a turning point in my life. And within 2 weeks, I would give my heart to the Lord. And within about 8 weeks, I would be working in the ministry, where I quit my job and went to work for him in Roncanoli, traveling around.
I remember Ron, yes.
Doing spiritual warfare conferences, and had no idea what I was doing. But
So when you accepted Christ, kind of like your dad, it was like you were all in.
had no choice, yeah. And I was in a very low point in my life. I was engaged to be married, and that didn't go through. I was 26 years old, and I'd hit the kind of the ceiling of my profession. I was a produce manager, and I was working 4 a.m.s till 1 p.m., 5 days a week. I was just kind of miserable, and I couldn't put my finger on why. And when the Lord came into my life, everything just seemed to open. And my father said, "I can't pay you what you're making. I'll pay you like $8 an hour." And I remember saying, "No problem, I'll take it," and not knowing how I'd make my bill payment. But you know, God always makes a way. And where there's vision, there'll be provision. And it was the best decision of my life.
And then Michelle enters the picture. Beautiful, Michelle.
We are going to be married
20 years.
20 years here in just a couple months. So she was an usher at Jubilee.
Yeah.
So I think every single
I
man
was
should
gonna
meet
say,
their
So
potential mate in
singles-
church.
Singles, head down to Jubilee on
There you go,
Sunday,
yeah.
and
Make yourself, get yourself out there. But we met in the hallways. Actually, I knew her brother. He worked at the produce, in the grocery business with me. And I had known him for 15 years. He never told me he had a sister. So I see him talking to her in the hallway, and I said, "Who's that?" He said, "It's my sister," and it floored me. And her brother Joey, we had made a small wager. He is an Oakland Raider fan, and I'm a San Francisco 49er fan. And I had won the bet that year, and he had never paid his, I don't remember if it was lunch or whatever.
Whatever he owed you had
and
not.
I said, "I'll tell you what, give
I
me
have
give me your sister's phone number and we'll call it even." Second best decision of my life. So, and 20 years later,
There you are.
here we are.
And what do you say about this? How was that first date?
It was great, except I thought I was not going on a date. I thought I was going for a counseling session.
It's semantics, counseling, date.
Which takes me to the next thing.
All right.
You wore a lot of hats. Maybe it wasn't a counselor at the church, but you were like youth pastor, single ministries. I mean, a lot of different things.
Yes.
You've been alongside your dad
Yeah, for the last 28 years.
for almost 3 decades.
Yes. So the minute I started working for him, he put me in Bible college. He put me into Sierra Pacific Bible College, and I didn't know anything, to be honest with you. And I was raised kind of Catholic, so my knowledge of the Bible was very, very minimal, but I was fascinated with it. And I graduated in '92, and by '94 he ordained me, and I was a youth pastor, or junior high pastor first, and then I think our singles pastor quit and moved on, so I said I'd fill it, and I filled it for a couple years, and sports ministries, and young adults, and whatever the church needed, I was willing to fill in.
Willing to do it.
Yeah.
And now the church needs something else, which we're going to talk about when we return. And you said, "I'm in that as well." And Michelle. All right, we'll find out more with Adam and Michelle Bernal when we return.
I met a young girl who asked me to come pray for her family, and that was the first time I ever stepped on a leper colony. And at that point, I knew from that moment on that that was my call for the rest of my life.
Hansen's disease is the current term they're using for leprosy. It's amazing. A lot of people think that it's a disease of antiquity, but it's still around.
Yes, we have clinics now in all 17 colonies in India. And so we've really have helped cure the disease, because it is curable through medicine.
Welcome back. We're with Adam and Michelle Bernal. And in the last segment, we talked about all the different hats you wore and how you kind of stepped up to the plate. And we had fun with that, but the truth was that where the Lord needed you, you were willing and you were there and you were dedicated, and now you're needed elsewhere.
We are planting an extension campus south of the main campus in San Jose in a little community called Morgan Hill, California.
Where the church started.
Where the church started. So this is kind of a closure for
Yeah.
my father. He's always had a burden for this city. He raised his family there. Even on his days off, he and my mother go down there, and that's where they'll go have lunch, or they like that movie theater. So about a year ago, on a Sunday, he says, I'm going to plant a campus down there. So we said, well, if you want to, I'll run it for you, and we'll get it going. So that's what we're doing.
And it's called Jubilee Bridge.
Morgan Hill.
All right.
Yeah. So, and this is not a church plant.
Right.
This is an extension campus. So if you're a member of Jubilee, your membership's still good at the little church. If you want your kids to go to the big kids camps or do any of the big functions, Thunder in the Bay, what have you, you're still a Jubilee member. And we're going to get my father down there at least once a month, either on a midweek service or on a Sunday, because he is their pastor as well. So.
And in the area, in the San Jose area, I mean, it can take hours to get around. It can take, time. And there's different communities. And he has a heart for Morgan Hill, which is different than the one for San Jose.
It's very different. And when we were kids, Morgan Hill was cowboys or fruit stands. And now it's families. And a lot of them work at Google, or they work at Facebook or Cisco. And they're commuting into Silicon Valley every day. And my wife looked up how many families in the last 10 to 12 years have moved from San Jose, because it's a little more affordable down in Gilroy and Morgan Hill. How many have moved down there? And I think how many of those?
It's over 300.
Over 300 family units have moved down there in the last. So I know the Jubilee name is very well known down there, and we're very excited about it.
And the community you're talking about, they would prefer not to travel on weekends. It's kind of nice that you're actually going to be there with them.
Yeah, if they commute 5 times in a week, to ask them to do that 6th is very difficult.
Right. So Jubilee has a food pantry, a massive one actually. Michelle, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it started about 10 years ago, and we had a lot of space at Jubilee, and it just so happened to have a dock in the back, so it worked out perfect. But we service about 350 families a week.
Through the food pantry and clothing, and you provide all kinds of services to them.
Yeah, food, clothing, and small household items that are needed.
And over the holidays, you have special...
Yeah, we do a Thanksgiving, Christmas, and a back to school every year.
So anyone who wants more information during those holidays, and they can find that on your website.
Absolutely, yeah.
Talk to us about the program you called Hope for Hanson.
Hope for Hansons,
Yeah, what is that?
That's a nonprofit organization that I started about 6 years ago. And it is a nonprofit that helps people with leprosy.
Hansen's disease is the current term they're using for leprosy. And my father's been going to India since the 80s.
Right.
Yes.
And my first time overseas, he took me to Guntur, India, and it's amazing that when you're in India, it's almost like another planet. It's the poverty in certain areas is so adverse. It's striking, and that you'll still see people with Hansen's disease, or what is called leprosy, and my wife decided, I'm going to do something about that.
So tell me what your organization does then.
Our organization is really not just to help them with their basic needs, but to really give them a hope and a future for their life, that it doesn't have to be begging, but that we've done micro-lending for businesses. We've done sewing schools. We have clinics now in all 17 colonies in India. And so we've really have helped cure the disease, because it is curable through medicine, and that was what they were lacking when we met them. So we made sure that medical was the first thing that we did there, and as we did that, we've decided that lifestyle of begging is not a good lifestyle. So we decided to really make an effort to change their lives in a better way. And so whether it's through businesses, farming, sewing, school, all of our children now are in having an education, and so no more begging for the children.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
17 colonies just in the Hyderabad area that she is over now. And not only in India, but there's one in the Dominican Republic and Nepal and St. Lucia in the Caribbean. And it's amazing. A lot of people think that it's a disease of antiquity, but it's still around.
Yes. So how does that make you feel to know that you actually are changing lives in a massive way?
I don't know. I mean, I guess good. I mean, I don't really look at it as, changing their lives for good. They've so gotten in my heart. They're like my family. And so I love them so much that, what you would do for your regular family to help them out, it's the same for me. So
we were actually over there with MC Hammer in the late 90s. And she got invited to one of the colonies and hugged a woman. You could probably tell the story better than me.
Well, after the break, please hold that, because I want to hear all of it. More with Adam and Michelle Bernal when we return.
Meeting India and finding that it would be my second home later was not what I was anticipating. It was through her that I met the family and the people in the colony that changed my life forever.
My father changed the name of the church to Jubilee, which kind of implies
Joy.
Festive and joyful. I think it's the greatest job in the world. You get to help people. Every time I turn on the news, it's information on how to make you feel worse or scared or fearful. But to me, the gospel is good news, and I like being somebody that can spread some good news, because I find that to be in very small quantities. And to me, that's the secret of Jubilee.
Welcome back. We were last talking about MC Hammer
Yes.
in India. So tell us the story, Michelle.
Pastor does big crusades back in the day. Every year he used to go. So I got invited one year to go, and changed my life forever. Meeting India and finding that it would be my second home later was not what I was anticipating. But the poverty is so horrific that it really shook the inner core of me, and I felt like I really needed to do something about it. And I spent about 6 months crying and praying and asking the Lord, what should I do? And so he asked me to do a girls' home. So I did. And at the grand opening of that girls' home, I met a young girl who asked me to come pray for her family. And that was the first time I ever stepped on a leper colony. And at that point, I knew from that moment on that was my call for the rest of my life, that I would help people with leprosy.
And how is that young girl today?
The young girl does not have leprosy. It was Grandma who had leprosy. Okay. And it was through her that I met the family and the people in the colony that changed my life forever. And
that'd be the first colony of
the first.
the 16.
Yeah, of the 16 now.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Well, so what is ahead for Jubilee this year? You are affecting lives, obviously, locally and abroad. What is coming up?
Well, I'm a big believer in everybody should have a chance to do a missions trip. So about 3 or 4 times a year, we'll take people on missions trips, whether to India, but we also in Mexico and the Philippines and the Dominican Republic, and we've done Panama and a few other places. And I really encourage the congregation to do that. I also like to do one big tour. We just got back from Greece, where we followed the footsteps of St. Paul, and then I got a chance to preach in Italy, and we went over there. But next year, we're going to do a biblical tour of Italy. So I'm excited about that, and I'd like to take people to the catacombs, where some of the earliest Christian services were held, and a few of the churches throughout Rome. There's a church that has the chains of St. Peter there. I just want people to see these things and become real in their heart, and I think it's important to do those. We do Israel about every 3 or 4 years, but this year we're going to do something different. We're going to go to Italy. My father throws major big conferences every year.
And Bible school. A lot of pastors were trained
at Jubilee Bible School, over the years. Many in the state of California, everywhere from Los Banos up to Chico and Sacramento areas and Stockton, and that's that makes me very, very proud. I like to go out and minister at a lot of those churches over the year.
Adam, why do you do this?
Because I think it's the greatest job in the world. You get to help people. Every time I turn on the news, it's information on how to make you feel worse or scared or fearful. But to me, the gospel is good news, and I like being somebody that can spread some good news, because I find that to be in very small quantities. And to me, that's the secret of Jubilee. My father changed the name of the church to Jubilee, which kind of implies
Joy.
festive and
Right.
joyful, because it should be. Church shouldn't
Yeah.
be to go somewhere where you feel worse about yourself walking out than you did walking in.
Right.
You should feel better.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been our little motto, that it should be a filling station, and that the joy of the Lord should be your strength. That's what keeps you strong.
When I walked into Jubilee on those occasions, I feel welcome immediately, greeted, assisted, and then the Spirit is there, and the music is
Yes.
amazing.
I think a church should be the vehicle or the tool that helps an individual experience God. And if they do not experience God, then that organization, whatever denomination, or what, they did not do their job properly. We should be the modern day Levites that are the ones that help usher in the Spirit
Yeah,
of God.
yeah.
And if you're at a church and you don't feel the Spirit, you need to go to a place that you do feel the Spirit.
And let me just talk about the youth ministry too. The facility for your youth shows that you care about the youth of San Jose.
Yeah, well, we were the youth pastors for a number of years, and some of the proudest moments on any Sunday is half of the band at Jubilee is our old youth band, or half of the singers that are up there singing are our old youth.
Wow.
To me, this is a good youth ministry, kind of ushers up new leaders, and they know the DNA better of the church than some of the people on staff, because they lived it, they grew up in it. And to me, that's very important.
30 seconds is all we have left. Are you glad your dad changed his life?
Oh, I'd still be cutting cabbage, I bet, right now if I wouldn't have met this pretty girl sitting to my right. All it takes sometimes is one key salvation in a family or an organization or on a street, and it just blossoms all over. It's incredible.
Michelle, who's welcome at Jubilee?
Everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah.
I get that idea.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us. For more information about Jubilee Christian Center, or to get in touch with Pastor Adam or Michelle Bernal, visit jubilee.org or ktln.tv. Remember that KTLN is a donor-supported ministry. Programs like this one are made possible through your support. Thanks for being with us, and I hope you join us again next week.